I don't think anybody who's heard me knows how I feel about Kurt Waldheim. Knows what contempt I've held him in for a long time before everybody else did. If I may brag a little bit, Bob.
I'd like it.
Back in the 70s, when this jerk was the Secretary General of the United Nations, I was getting my former employers all nervous because I was attacking Waldheim every day. So nobody has to tell me what a lowlife he is.
I'm delighted that there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court. I'm just saddened that it wasn't Justice William Brennan or Thurgood Marshall to retire. I'd like to see...
I would rather that they would croak so we could throw a party. Is the possessor of one of the largest pair of couillons in the city, God bless him, says Inouye hits rock bottom with his Nuremberg bombshell. Shortly after 4 p.m. yesterday, the harrowing 6-day ordeal of Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North drew to a close in a bitter, explosive atmosphere of condemnation. It was the perfect ending, for it exposed the sham underlying so much of the hearing. The Marine had been brought before congressional panels, ostensibly, to place on record the facts of what happened in the bizarre Iran-Contra controversy. Instead, panel members, seizing their 15 minutes of fame on network television, used the occasion to indict North, convict him, denigrate him, hang him, subject him to patronizing lectures, and then, in the end, shired him and his reputation. The betrayal of their charter burst over the nation in the final moments of an address by the panel's chairman, Senator Daniel Inouye of Hawaii. Inouye cut loose a scathing assault on North. It amazed and repelled me, the more so because Inouye is himself an authentic war hero who lost his arm in Italy in World War II and was decorated with his nation's second highest military award. He is a man of valor and honor, and that is what made his attack even worse. One would have thought that Inouye at least might have understood the issues underlying Oliver North's appearance before the committee. Instead, he chaired the proceedings this week. As he chaired the proceedings this week, you could see him seething inside, frequently surly, always overruling the objections of North's attorney, Brendan Sullivan. And so forth and so on. But his allusion to Nuremberg was really a low blow.
The Tom Bradens and the Jane Fondas and the Sam Donaldsons out there eat your heart out. I mean, I think they all expected the cat to be let out of the bag today, and all they got was a little old pussycat.
Did you see the disappointed look on Chris Wallace's unctuous face?
Well, prior to that, when he was speaking to Tom Brokaw, I guess he expected World War III, I would imagine, but after that, I think when it finally came out that no, there was no diversion, the president did not know of the diversion, it was, well, now what do we do? You know, it was, they didn't know what to say.
Ted Kennedy, a liberal swine Marxist senator from Massachusetts, made a comment a few weeks ago about if Robert Bork became Supreme Court Justice, something about women would have back alley abortions, rogue police will go into homes without warrants.
Yeah, I know. It was a scurrilous attack, a scurrilous attack.
Now, here is the typical liberal swine hypocrite, Bob. Here's a man who, his way of abortion is to kill the mother and the baby at the same time. Here's a man who, when the police were trying to investigate that murder, which it was, made sure that the police put a stop to their investigation. Here's a man who lives in homes where you would never see a black, Hispanic, Indian, or whatever else he wants to preach around his home. He's the ultimate swine hypocrite, and I'm sick of him. And I don't know what the hell's wrong with the people of Massachusetts. They put in Kennedy. They put in Dukakis. They put in John Kerry, Tip O'Neill. I don't know what the hell those people got, what their problem is up there. But this guy is just a plain, stinking, rotten liar.
Hello, Elizabeth, on 77 WABC. I'm going to have to get people to be a little more outspoken on this program. They're a little so reticent, so euphemistic. Direct ties to Castro. But don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, what Jose is pointing out. This Sandinista government has been aided by advisors from Eastern Europe, from Libya, the PLO, from Cuba, of course. And how come the the Daniel Inouyes? How come the Lee Hamiltons? How come the Tom Foleys? How come the Louis Stokes? Never mention that. How come? I'll tell you why. They don't care. To Luke on the New Jersey line. Hello, Luke. Are you there, Luke? Luke? All right, how about Matthew? How about John? Okay. How about James? Okay. We didn't get any one of them. All right. Hey, Luke, if you're listening, I hope you croak. Well, I don't know why people do that, especially on the New Jersey line. Do you know something? The New Jersey folk are really the impatient ones. Hello, Luke?
Don't know where you got this Eleanor Clift.
I'll tell you how. Newsweek magazine has made her available. Newsweek magazine is very radio aware, very aware of the importance of promotion on radio, and they make her available. And because she's available, and because she's with Newsweek, and because she's there, she's heard here.
Well, I don't care much for her. I think she's a female Peter Jennings.
Well, like 99.5% of the media, she's a lefty, yes.
That's unfortunate. And she was talking about the congressmen and the senators as if they were responsible people. They are a bunch of pompous, arrogant windbags.
I guarantee you she wouldn't be that solicitous, that in awe of Congress if we had a liberal administration and a conservative Congress. Then Congress would be a bunch of obstructionists, a bunch of reactionaries.
Sure.
That's right.
The thing is, I think that the hearings are great because they've exposed these characters.
Well, you realize that Eleanor and a lot of other people sounded. Now, I asked Eleanor if she was disappointed. She hedged. But they sounded very disappointed.
I think they are.
That something worse hasn't come out of the hearings. No, seriously.
The aim is to get Reagan.
Of course.
And it's obvious to most thinking people.
Should be.
And I don't care for her at all.
Okay.
I don't know how you could get anybody
well,
reasonably...
all right, the next time there are hearings, we'll get somebody else.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, Kate.
Hello. I think also the aim is to destroy the Contra effort, which means we've come full circle from the Harry Truman days. There are many people today who say how much they admire Harry Truman, yet under his administration there were the House Un-American Activities Committee and the Diet Committee and the congressional hearings then were to find out who were the communists in key places who were trying to pervert the...
Very good. Absolutely. Thank you.
I think that your whole program, you're missing the point on Nicaragua. The point is that Daniel Ortega and the Sandinistas are the freedom fighters. They threw up the oppression of Somoza and the United States, and it's Reagan's neo-fascist propaganda that's making them out to be villains. The real terrorists here are the Contras. Communists can be freedom fighters.
Well, if they were the freedom fighters, then why have they closed down La Prensa and all the other newspapers? Why have they suppressed freedom? Why have they thrown out the Constitution? Why have they gone back on their promise to have Why have they gone back on their promise to have free elections? Why have they armed to the teeth and menaced their neighbors to the north and to the south?
And that's why. That's why they're armed.
You didn't answer my questions about the suppression of freedom.
Suppression of freedoms, that's what we're told.
Oh, that's what we're told. In other words, you believe that anything you hear about the Contras, that's bad, but you don't believe anything you hear about the Sandinistas, that's bad.
Hey, anybody that throws off the kind of oppression the United States can bring down on a country has my vote for being freedom fighters.
Well, then why in hell's name don't you get the hell out of this country, since you hate this country, since you're an enemy of this country, and go elsewhere? And listen, I tell you what, you two-bit traitorous jerk, come on down here to the station. I'll beat your nose in, you skunk. Get off my phone. I cannot understand a person who becomes an absolute traitor to his country. That I cannot handle.
You know what? I'm a frequent caller of Ira Fistell. I should say I'm a frequent opponent of Ira Fistell.
Now, why anybody would waste her time listening to that liberal jerk is beyond me.
Well,
he's not only a liberal, he's a liberal jerk, and you can tell him I said so.
I have called him that name. I mean, Bob, I have called him that name.
You know, just being a liberal doesn't make a person a jerk. There are maybe one or two liberals who aren't jerks, but he happens to be a liberal jerk.
Yes, well, you know what he does? I mean, he feels...
I don't, because I don't listen to him. You see, I try... There are very few things we have control over in life. Very few things. One of them is the switch on our radio, and the other is the switch on our television. And probably, if the liberals have their way, the day will come we will have mandatory viewing and mandatory listening. It'll be like George Orwell's 1984, where you can't turn the thing off.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I love your program with the exception of hearing Bob Fitzsimmons do a commercial every 2 minutes.
He's got a good voice, though.
He does, but, I mean, every minute? But,
well, I don't think it's every minute.
Yeah, but you know, Ira said his main argument, which I went nuts over, he feels, and this is almost his word, that we have owed service to our society's criminals. He feels that, he said that obviously society has done something wrong. And I said, Ira, my grandparents came here, they were just as poor. They didn't go wrong. And he does not feel, first of all, he does not feel they should be punished. Are you aware of that? I mean, I know you...
Well, why do you suppose I called him a jerk?
He out and out told me he does not feel there should be... he said, what is punishment? What is punishment?
Well, guys like Fistel have overlooked one thing, and that is that society must be protected. And that is, it is the duty of society to protect itself. Not only the right, but the duty. And when you put criminals before society, you have what we have in this country today.
And, I mean, Paul, a lot of times callers make fools of... Now, a caller on your program, Dorothy, called up. The woman made a total fool out of herself. I don't know what she's talking about. She agrees with you. She agrees with him.
Francis, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Outside of listening to talk shows, what else do you do with your life?
Well, I happen to be a student.
Well, if you're a student, that's fine. But I think you'd learn more by reading books than listening to radio all the time.
Yes, listen, Mr. Grant, okay? I have to work for a living. I'm not going to be able to sit in front of a microphone for 4 hours a day.
Well, look, I'm not trying to tell you to not listen. I just think that maybe you ought to take a vacation from Fistel.
Yes, well, I listen to him only at night because I have to...
Only at night. It's interesting. He's on only at night.
Mr. Grant, I don't get paid in the six figures. I have to work at night to make money to go to school.
All right, Francis, I appreciate your call. Right now, Bruce Anderson, front and center, and... Bruce, there are so many stories that you're going to be reporting. I don't know where to begin.
Well, we'll begin with this one, Bob. A spokesman at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, says Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun is undergoing treatment for prostate cancer. Spokesman says Blackmun is undergoing treatment which is not incapacitating and is short-term. He says the prognosis is excellent.
Oh, too bad.
You mentioned one of them several weeks ago, Mr. George, Representative George...
Crockett.
Yes, an outstanding disgrace as far as I'm concerned. American...
Well, George Crockett's record is very clear. It's right out there. It's nothing that's hidden. And the man has been pro-Soviet, pro-communist all his life.
That's right.
Yeah.
I also have some information to the effect that he, once upon a time, was a paid agent of Fidel Castro.
Well, anybody who voted against the condemnation of the Soviet Union for their shooting down of the Korean airliner 007 has got to be a bad person.
Yes.
And some people could be misled by George Crockett's rather docile demeanor, by his seeming entrance into dotage. But one must not judge a book by its cover, because underneath that seemingly benign physiognomy is a man whose policies are alien, inimical, and destructive to our country.
I would like to speak about the Bork nomination. And I'm rather confident, first of all, that Justice Bork will be confirmed. But I feel that just as in the Iran hearings, that I would like to have a public display of the confirmation hearings so that some of these verbose bags of wind, or maybe even the Duke of Chappaquinddick, who, by the way, for the public's edification, was thrown out of Harvard for cheating, could question the most qualified man in America probably to serve on the court as to his qualifications.
Have C-SPAN, of course, will be able to follow, and there will be but if you don't have C-SPAN, you won't be able to see
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all right, Joe.
I was going to say that, even if we disagree with Chairman Hamilton, he didn't editorialize, he didn't come across as anything but a gentleman, and he was entitled to his belief. He didn't talk to the press afterward, and that is the point, that you're entitled to disagree. That's what this country is based on. But if you're a bag of wind like Daniel Inouye, the public sees that, and I guarantee you that the Duke of Chappaquinddick would come across exactly as he is, just a verbose bag of wind without any foundation in objection. What is he going to object to Justice Bork's qualifications to sit on the bench for?
These brainless...
Oh, I wish she would be the Democratic nominee. I would love that.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
How wonderful. You know what? I think I'll make a novena.
Okay.
That would be the way to get rid of them whole lot.
If she were the Democratic presidential nominee, or even the vice presidential nominee, shades of Geraldine Ferrero.
Right.
The defiant chin. Have you noticed that Pat Schroeder's chin is just as sharp as did you notice?
Yeah. Tell me a whip.
What is it with women like that? As they get older, their chins get more prominent. What is that?
Of course, they're fundamentally witches.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. Fundamentally. All right.
But first, I've been watching these hearings in Washington and listening to these holier-than-thou tones by the various congressmen and senators, and I can't help but wonder, in light of the fact that we do have three separate branches of government, as you know, why is it always the executive branch that's on the short end, and the Congress is always conducting these open hearings? Now, we've had scandals in Congress with the Page.
Well, let me save you a lot of time. If there are members of Congress who get in trouble, and there are, as a matter of fact, right now there are 8 under indictment, they get their comeuppance through the court. Sometimes, in the case of Adam Clayton Powell, they are censured. Sometimes resent. Is the obvious partisanship, the obvious posturing on the part of so many Democrats, who, if it were a Democrat president, would not be so sanctimonious. That's what I object to. I can't believe Paul Sarbanes would have been this outraged. I can't believe that Daniel Inouye would be that disturbed.
Yeah, the way he speaks, like he's God.
Well, on that committee, he thinks he is. But I can't believe that they would be that outraged if it were Jimmy Carter who were in office. Lawrence Taylor and Dwight Gooden. First, Mr. Taylor. Now, Mr. Gooden. Thank you, gentlemen.
Senator Inouye, or whatever it is,
Senator Inouye, you're out of order, Colonel North.
Pompous person that never performed on TV.
I think he began reading his press clippings and got carried away.
And keep us of America employed. Now I'll debate you. Hello?
You don't do that.
Yes, you do it.
You don't do that. Now I'll debate you. Who the heck are you? What is this, the Jack Show?
I'm talking.
First of all, you make a Carbone statement.
That's the phone you have.
Yeah, it's a Carbone statement, and why should it be? The person who said it is a Carbone.
Listen, I don't care what you call me. I want to...
You don't care. I'm not calling you anything. I'm identifying you.
Talk to you. You're avoiding the issue now. I told you...
Not avoiding the issue. Hey, listen, first of all, try Fixodent.
Ideas I'm giving to you.
Have you ever heard of Fixodent?
Well, you want to go back to the Depression and 30s where people had eggs for 15 cents and didn't have the eggs because the economy was weak? Hello?
Did you gargle with lye prior to making this call?
15 cents a nickel, but people go buy something. When you buy something, there's millions of people like you, and cycles are down. But
the fact of the matter is, the people, Jack, maybe you're wealthy, and if you are, God bless. But you know something? Most people don't have the money. They're strapping themselves. And we've got to bring prices down. This is ridiculous what people are charging and getting away with it. Where do they get off charging all this money for automobiles? Come on, Jack.
They charge us, but
Where do you live, Jack? Where do you live?
With other people's businesses.
Where do you live, Jack?
The economy. Save a little, spend a little.
Where do you live, Jack?
I live everywhere. What do
You live everywhere? What are you, one of the homeless?
Yes,
I mean, do you rent a place? Do you own a place?
help everybody. Humanity. And you're trying to...
Yeah,
Listen, you said...
Hi, Jack. Is your voice hurt?
You...
Jack,
Yes, hello.
does your voice hurt?
Of course it hurts speaking to you.
Well, it's killing me. Right now, we're going to talk to... we have a nice, unreconstructed 1960 liberal with us.
There's nothing knee-jerk about objecting to a man who would let people go on ranting about those supposedly vicious people that apparently you believe are all in here.
You know what troubles me about people like you is not that you disagree. As a matter of fact, I welcome disagreement, as surprising as that may seem to some. What disturbs me about people like you is how you are so sanctimonious and think that you are speaking from on high and that yours is the last word. This smug, arrogant, self-serving crap when you say, how do you stay on the air? Do you say that to the left-wingers? Do you say that to the black racists on WLIB or any other radio station? Of course you don't, because you are guilty of that double standard that I am speaking out against. You are guilty of the very double standard that in the long run will not only destroy me, but destroy you as well, and you cannot see it. And I object to that double standard. How dare you accuse me of racism when if I were black you would just say, hey, I tell you, he's a hard-hitting activist, or he's a militant. And because I sit here, as you say, and just go, while someone is making a racist comment, that somehow or other denigrates me. That somehow or other disqualifies me in your eyes.
Well, listen to how you're responding to me. You don't seem to get your ire up to that extent when somebody calls in with a racial remark or dialogue.
Well, maybe I don't consider some of these racist remarks. Maybe this is such a subjective thing that what may seem racist to you does not seem racist to me, and vice versa.
When people refer to people as animals, obviously strictly on the basis of their race.
Well, that's your interpretation.
It's not a matter of interpretation.
No, it's your interpretation. I can only tell you how I think. I can only tell you what I feel. I can only tell you what I believe. I can't put myself inside a caller and say this is what they're thinking. What? Even if it may seem that way, I can't say for sure. I can't say for sure what your bias is, but you obviously have one. Maybe you're one of those Jimmy Breslin-type whites who feels guilty for being white.
Absolutely not.
You know, I just don't understand why a white person would call and accuse me of racism. I could understand it if you were black, because then you would have some of the emotional stimulus.
Very interesting.
And I would understand that and appreciate that.
What?
But sitting there on high in your smug, sanctimonious way, I can't abide that.
Why would I need to be a member of a minority group to take exception to your making attacks against them?
Well, because you would have to have a particular feeling, but you obviously don't have that feeling.
Any kind of injustice.
Let me ask you, do you know of any cases where blacks are concerned about prejudice against whites? Do you ever hear them speak out, ever concerned about what they may perceive, as prejudice? Because you're perceiving this prejudice.
I've noted on several occasions that on the commemoration of the Holocaust, many Jews have spoken out against racism in the past, and also...
Many Jews have, yes. Jews certainly have.
No, I said black.
Jews have done more for the civil rights movement than any other group. And what have they got? What have they got in appreciation of that? What have they got in appreciation of that?
The point I was making is...
The point you're making is that you are a coward. That's your point.
What am I afraid of?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. You may be one of those who fears the black race.
Well, name calling, I'm not surprised.
That's no name calling. That's no name calling. If it's untrue, it's untrue. What were you doing at the outset? You were calling me a racist. Is that not a name?
What I said was that you tolerate racism. And you clearly do.
Well, I've tolerated you, so that means I tolerate a particular type of prejudice, the type of prejudice that a sanctimonious liberal has. And if that's name-calling, then I plead pleasantly guilty. I am calling you a name. You are sanctimonious. You are pompous. You are arrogant. How dare you think you can set this agenda? You and you alone. You and your kind. How dare you?
I'm speaking for one man's opinion, my own. I'm not taking any... I'm not...
What do you do for a living that you can sit there and monitor me day after day? A writer? What have you written?
I've written newspaper articles.
Newspaper articles? You don't work for any publication, do you? You're freelance, right?
That's incorrect, but I won't tell you the name of the publication.
Well, then I'll tell you what you ought to do. Unless, if you're a mensch at all, I'll tell you what you ought to do. You ought to write an article about me and what a racist I am and how I tolerate racial remarks. You ought to write a scathing denunciation of me.
Everybody knows, Bob.
Oh, everybody knows. Well, then what did we need you to call? You phony, you two-bit jerk.
It's been written.
You poor excuse for a man. Get off my phone, you creep. And anytime you want to write about me and call me any name, go right ahead. I give you permission. In advance, I won't sue for libel. Call me any name you want. Because coming from you, it's meaningless.
Well, I thought it would be more meaningful if I did it within hearing range of your listeners, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I don't appreciate the call. Get off my phone.
Yeah, the CIA director.
Well, if you're suggesting that maybe there was something nefarious, something suspicious about his death, I don't believe that. I believe he died from the complications caused by his very serious brain operation.
I think he had the decency to commit suicide like Goering did before his trial.
Like who did?
Like Goering.
You compare William Casey with Hermann Goering?
Well, that's an insult to Goering.
I suggest that if you could get somebody, your keeper, or whoever it is who let you make this phone call or dialed it for you, you ask your keeper if he or they will take you here to WABC. I'd like to give you a tour.
Really?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to give you a tour. As a matter of fact, I'd like to be so helpful to you, I'd like to get my hands on you.
Are you threatening?
Am I threatening you? Bet your sweet life I'm threatening you, you pipsqueak, phony creep. With that, he hung up. How dare he? Hello,
I finally got a hold of the book, Closing of the American Mind, and I think this is a book that has to be studied more than read.
Well, that's true. It does have to be studied more than read. And by the way, Simon & Schuster has been avoiding me like a plague. Here they are, one of the great publishing firms of America. And they didn't want me to interview Allan Bloom. They don't want to publicize the book. I think that is a very chilling fact.
I think it's a shame. And
Next step is they burn the book. First, we don't publicize it. Secondly, we walk away from it. Thirdly, we tell Bob Grant we don't want any kind of interview. And the next step is we don't publish any more issues. And the final step is those issues that are out, burn those books.
I would hope not. I would hope they don't do that. I'm going into the book slowly. I can...
Well, it is not easy reading, my friend.
Not at all.
It is not easy reading. It is a scholarly work. It was not intended for mass consumption. But because Allan Bloom says so many of the things on a much higher level, of course, than we have on the Bob Grant Show, it has created an interest. An interest is followed by controversy, and controversy is followed by an attempt at censorship. And that's what Simon & Schuster is guilty of doing, censoring their own book. Incredible.
Well, John certainly took the cannon in the chest, not just the spears in the chest. But I, frankly, believe John Poindexter simply because perjury is a very serious charge with criminal penalties. I'm not sure he broke any laws that have criminal penalties attached. The Boland Amendment, as you know, does not, although conspiracy to violate it might. But as Mike Deaver knows, you've got to be careful what you say when you're under oath. And I can just not see Admiral Poindexter wanting to go to jail for anything, nor Oliver North for that matter. So I tend to believe the Admiral. Now, his memory was not as crisp as people would like, but
When you're dealing in that job, a high-pressure job with a jillion hot issues, all urgent, in front of you, I'm not sure my memory would be that good either.
Attorney General who revealed for the first time the Contra connection with the Iran money?
It sure was. It was his staff that found the document that tipped off this event. It's one that I think Colonel North did not shred or get rid of. And it is ironic, but I'll tell you, politics is a very rough business, and especially when you're at Meese and when you're affiliated with the Reagan administration, you'll never see Congress investigate Democratic administrations as long as it's Democratic. But if you're a Republican administration, you're vulnerable to it. I don't mean that the hearings have been partisan. It just means the machinery of investigation is always in the hands of the majority party.
Well, what the United States Congressman Henry Hyde of Illinois, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, hi. I would like to talk about Sam Donaldson in particular and ABC News. I think they have to make a serious decision about Sam Donaldson. In so much as, I would say basically the last month he's been absolutely obnoxious and obsessive about what's going on in the Iran-Contra committee hearing, and I think that they've got to make some type of decision as to whether to make Donaldson a commentator such as you are, which of course he is an unabashed Reagan basher, which is, I guess, okay considering the fact that most of the media is, or they have to tell him, look, Sam, if you're going to be an objective journalist, you have to stop with these editorializing innuendos that make the people think, well, I'm an objective journalist.
Now, you're making a very good point, Ed, and I call on the chairman of the board, I call on the president of the network, I call on the hierarchy of ABC to do the right thing and make that decision. And I think that decision should be easy for them to make, and that is that Donaldson would stop being White House correspondent and be proclaimed for what he is, a commentator. Let him be the left counterpoint to the magnificent George Will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you're correct that even though it's my network and I want to tell you, you're absolutely right. They must make that decision.
Absolutely. I just can't believe the American people can. I mean, ABC is one of the three major networks, and here's a guy who probably has the most sensitive journalist position in the network.
Without a doubt. No, he should not be White House correspondent any longer.
And another thing,
they should give that assignment to Britt Hume.
Oh, he's great. I think he's tremendous. I know he's covering the House and the Senate.
Yeah, that's right, but they should make Britt Hume the White House correspondent. They ought to get rid of some of those broads. They got too many broads, but it's not as bad as NBC. NBC today, I had to turn off the Today Show. I tuned in, and there was Maria Shriver, and I figured, oh, well, she's sitting in for Jane Pauley. No, she was sitting in for Bryant Gumbel. He wasn't there. Jane Pauley was back. And I said, well, I'll watch John Palmer do the news. You know who did the news? This broad who thinks she looks at the camera like she's making every guy in the audience. She thinks she's so gorgeous and sexy. Deborah Norville. How did she get her job? Who does she know? Who is she friends of, married to, the Gumar of? It's a disgrace. Shame on you, NBC! Thank you very much, Ed. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Mr. Grant.
You know, one of these days I'm going to speak my mind. I'm tired of holding back here. Hello, Martin.
I guess, well, I'm not similar to
Deborah Norville. Line. They do not have the patience that the New Yorkers have, right, Mo?
Yeah, that's too bad. I was reading that same story about Mr. Walsh, the poor guy.
You read about Mr. Walsh?
Yes, and
I want to begin tomorrow's program by talking about that. I think it's an issue that cries out to be heard.
It's a commonplace story. An innocent citizen, unarmed. In this case, he came down into from the elevator.
Yeah.
He was going to get his car in the quietness, 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm going to tell that story tomorrow, Mo.
We should have a gun. All people out there should buy a second-hand gun, a good throwaway gun. If you ever get caught with it by the cops, just say it was the mugger's gun. If you have to use it, if you get held up by one mugger and blast him away, say there was two. You wrestle the gun away from the one who got away. You beat the gun rap that way, more and more people should arm themselves.
All right, let me ask you this, Mo. You've been talking this for a long time. Has there ever been an occasion where you were about to be victimized by crime, where you produced your weapon and avoided the crime?
Yeah, about 5 times.
All right, 5 times.
And it saved me just by showing it.
All right, you show it. Okay. Mo walks down the street showing it.
Just like the guy comes out.
He flashes his gun. All right, thank you, Mo. Frank, hello.
Yes, Bob?
Yes, Frank.
Bob, I have been following the political inquisition, the political crucifixion that is being waged by these Democratic quislings down in Washington. And you know, Bob, I listened in the media very carefully because Ted Koppel had said one night that they wanted to know about the sincerity of Ollie North. And the reason they wanted to know about his sincerity is because, after all, they said Ollie North had worked for an actor. And they said that Ollie North was manipulating the media with his various expressions that he was using. Now, Bob, has these same quislings in the media, have they ever doubted the sincerity of, say, for example, that fat tail of communist-loving swill Ed Asner? Ed Asner's an actor, but nobody ever doubts his sincerity because, after all, I guess he's a leftist. Or how about that bearded traitor that went down to Nicaragua to sing praises to the Stalinistas that seized power down there on their anniversary, Chris Christopherson? Has anyone ever doubted his sincerity? You know, Bob, I listen to a lot of these dolts and dimwits that call up about the Stalinistas and how we shouldn't be meddling down there. Do you know that one of the first acts of the Ortega junta when they seized power was to support the Soviet invasion and rape of Afghanistan? You know, not only have they turned Nicaragua into a festering pest hole of third world terrorist infestation, but, you know, their confiscation of the Jewish property, think for a second, what would they say, these liberals, if that was done by a Pinochet of Chile? Why, they'd be howling like a barrel of scorched cats. Their racist war of genocide against the Mosquito Indians. Why, if a non-communist government were to do that again, these same liberal quislings would be screaming racism.
Right.
You know, Bob, we've got the greatest fighting force in the history of the universe, the U.S. Marines. But what in the heck is the sense of keeping them if we're never going to send them into action? Now, either we're going to send them into Nicaragua and clean out that pest hole, or we may as well disband the whole bit because these communists, Bob, are eating up our continent bit by bit. And if we're not got the guts or the gumption to use the U.S. armed forces, then we better forget the whole thing. Thank you.
All right, Frank laid it all out, and let's...
Single teachers.
Well, if that's the case, why did he say otherwise when he appeared with Mike Wallace on a segment with Dr. Howard Hurwitz back in 1978?
No.
Why did he say otherwise then?
He didn't say that.
He did too.
All right, well, let me tell you what he said. He was in favor of teaching English as a second language. These were teachers who did not...
Why are you shouting?
Oh, I'm sorry. He was in favor of teaching English as a second language. These teachers would not have to know Spanish. They would not have to know Korean. They would not have to know any foreign language. They would be taught how to teach any minority child who did not know English how to learn English by taking these children out of their regular classrooms for 1 hour a day and teaching them English and then...
What did Alvarado hire you as a public relations man?
No, but because when I was in the New York City education system, I went to some of the meetings that were held in his district.
Well, you should have asked him, if you feel this way, Alvarado, you jerk, why did you say otherwise to Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes?
He didn't. He said he was in favor of teaching English as a second language, not bilingual education.
Are you aware that Alvarado had to resign in disgrace on May 11th of 1984?
Yes, I am.
And he resigned on advice of his attorney because that was one way to avoid standing trial before the city's chief administrative law judge?
He resigned because, as he said, he did not want to disrupt education while he was...
What he said was
there were no criminal charges ever charged against him.
If he were honest, if he were not guilty of all those all those nefarious things, he would not have resigned. He would have proudly stayed in office. Comparison, it's totally invidious. You know, you sound like a little weasel and a stooge. And you know what you probably do? You probably clean out Alvarado's John. That's what you probably... Get off my phone, will you weasel? Never heard of such idiocy.
Especially with this Bork nomination, he's doing handsprings over Robert Bork, which, and you talk about the phoniness. Last year, he said he could accept Robert Bork.
As a matter of fact, last year, when the Rehnquist and Scalia nominations were coming up, he said he would have preferred Robert Bork.
I thought...
That was before he became a nominee, before he became one of the seven dwarfs.
I saw him on that show with Bill Buckley and all the seven Democratic candidates. Let me tell you something. The Democrats are in bad shape, which is kind of good because I'm a Republican. But
listen, the seven dwarfs, none of the seven dwarfs will have the nomination. The nomination will go to Il Supremo, who's going to jump out of a plane over the convention hall in Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, arm in arm with Michael Sergio. He's jumping out of a plane in a parachute. He will accept the nomination shortly after his parachute touches the floor of the convention center. Thank you for the call. It's time now to check in with...
Useless statements, I call them.
He still won't become the mayor.
I hope not.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
And that's why Eddie Koch, I was going to call him Il Supremo. Excuse me, Governor. That's why the Emperor, Edward I the First, that's why he knows he's going to be mayor till the year 2000, because there is such a dearth of people to run against him. It's an absolute desert out there. There's nobody. So when you think of the alternatives to the Emperor, you scratch your head and you say, well, I guess it's going to be the Emperor.
Well, the legislation shouldn't horrify anybody. What the banks are doing should horrify the American people. As you know, Bob, there have been billions and billions, almost $1 billion a month loans from Western banks in Europe and the United States to the Soviet Union at 7.5% interest rates. And my bill would give the President of the United States the discretionary authority over the export of capital, which, as you know, he has now over the export of technology, because capital is being exported to the Soviet Union at low interest loans, and they're totally untied. And my bill would give the President the discretion to stop that in the national security interest of the United States, and it was also required that banks report those untied loans to their shareholders.
You know, whenever a idiotic act of lunacy occurs, people like to find out who's responsible. Who's responsible?
Well, it is, I guess, the desire of U.S. banking interests in the United States and Europe and Japan to help finance the Soviet bloc countries. They are deeply in debt. Their economy is a drag on their country, and we're helping them restructure their debt with credit conditions that are more favorable to the Soviets and to the East Bloc countries than it is to small businessmen and women in New York, farmers in the Midwest, or consumers throughout our country. And I think it's just... it's the State Department, frankly. I wrote a letter to the President, Bob, before his meeting in Vienna, and I got a letter back from the State Department explaining how this is important, not for detente, but for better relations. But I think they should seek better relations with the American consumer, the American farmer, and small business people than just with the Soviet Union.
Congressman Jack Kemp, I know you know, and a lot of Americans also know that in 1920, Lenin said, the capitalists will sell us the rope we use to hang him.
Yeah, I used that quote in my press conference today, Bob, and I said there's kind of a twist on that. Not only will we sell them the rope, we'll provide them the credit to purchase the rope.
Well, you know, stuff like this goes on so often. I don't know whether the American public are getting numb to it, whether they don't care. It's so frustrating to hear you tell us that this is going on, and yet we can't seem to get our hands on the guilty parties.
Well, we've got a number of members of Congress, including senators in both parties, who are raising hell about it, and you can bet that Jack Kemp is going to take this to the President personally, as well as to the floor of the Congress, and try to pass an international financial
Security Act, which will give us the ability to shut off the flow of not only technology. Everybody was against the Toshiba mistake of giving technology transferred to the Soviet Union that allows them to operate their submarines without anyone in the West being able to track those submarines. Now, what is happening, we're giving them the capital as well, and I'd like to shut that off, or at least force the Soviet Union to get unsubsidized credit.
Congressman. Yes, Congressman Jack Kemp, ladies and gentlemen, on WABC. And everybody knew, but apparently very few people knew, that American banks have been loaning the Soviet Union virtually non-interest-free loans. Isn't that incredible? Here we try to scrape up a relatively few bucks so that the Contras will be able to stop the Sandinistas from enlarging the communist revolution in Central America. We want to keep communism out of Central America. We want to keep communism out of the Western Hemisphere. And yet, our banks are loaning money to the very country that has supplied the Sandinistas, that has armed Daniel Ortega to the teeth. Does it make sense? Can anybody figure out what the heck is going on here?
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you for calling. My daughter's 16.
Thank you for calling. Did I call you? I didn't know that.
I mean, thank you for taking my call.
A lot of people say, look, this is Bob Grant. It isn't that phony who calls himself a doctor, as people call him a doctor, and you got to be grateful that he took your call. That's what I'm here for.
Okay.
I don't like my Navy. I don't like my Navy exposed out there in the Straits of Hormuz. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they are escorting those Kuwaiti vessels when the Kuwaitis are ingrates and typical Arab jerks. I don't like that.
I agree with you there, sir.
I mean, what the Kuwaitis ought to do in return is give us a break on the price of oil. Instead, they're using the tension as excuses to bring the price of oil right back to where it was. The only good thing about it is all you Gavones who used to go up to Joe Matolo and say, hey, I don't care. Don't tell me about mileage. I don't care. Give me some big car. I don't care what I use it for gas. Those Gavones now, they're not so sure of themselves. So anytime a Gabon is embarrassed, that's good.
So bad about lending the Soviets money. The Soviet Union's just a country like we are, and we're a country that's pro-business, and we should lend them money just so we can make more money. Let's lend them money. Let them hang themselves with our money. There's no problem with that.
John, I don't know whether you're putting me on, whether you're doing a little shtick, whether you just want to provoke me, or whether you're just plain naive. I'm not quite sure, but somehow or other I get the feeling that you don't really believe what you're saying.
Oh, no, I believe definitely. This is the United States. We're supposed to...
You see, you're doing an act.
No.
You're doing an act. You don't really believe what you're saying.
Oh, no, I love the United States.
Well, nobody questioned whether you love the United States or not.
Well,
But you can't possibly believe that the Soviet Union is a country just like we are. You can't possibly believe that.
What's the difference between them? They're people just like anybody else.
Well, you sound just like that other nerd, and I don't waste my time. Hey, listen, you little two-bit creep. Do one of two things. Either get off the phone or get down here to the WABC studio so I can punch your dumb nose down your dumb throat. You creep, get off my phone! Hello, Bill.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Well, how am I? After that, how am I? Well, that slams the lid on things for today. Until tomorrow, this is Bob Grant reminding you your influence counts. Use it. Get Ortega. Or some of you stooges, some of Il Supremo's stooges, I told you, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to get to the bottom of the funny story that Il Supremo told out in Indianapolis, Indiana on July 28th. That was the phony story Il Supremo told when he said to the good people of the Hoosier State, he said that Daniel Patrick Moynihan had introduced him to Ronald Reagan. And as he was introducing him, Ronald Reagan said, oh, yes, Lee Iacocca, of course, I know you. And then Cuomo, in a very self-serving, snide, diabolical way, said, to him, we all look alike, I guess. I found out today that it was George Clark, not Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who introduced Il Supremo to the president. That it was George Clark here in New York City when the president was presenting a check to His Honor, the Emperor of New York, Edward I. It was George Clark who introduced Il Supremo. So anybody, you stooges of Il Supremos who listen to this program and then say, hey, Mario, you should hear what that skunk said about you today. Tell him what I said. And tell him if he wants to come on the program on an open mic, deny what I just said, he's welcome to. But don't hold your breath. The homeless and the convict population have something in common. Well, I don't think they should have anything in common. I don't think that the homeless want to be in such close propinquity to these convicts. Do you? Although you're not worried about the homeless any more than I am. I think come wintertime, when it gets real cold, they should stop rounding them up, thin the herd, let them freeze. But I still don't want them mixed with mutants from a work release program.
In the last few weeks, I've seen Mr. Allan Keyes, Assistant Secretary of State for International Affairs, on television. He was once on C-SPAN, and he was on an NBC show on a Sunday afternoon. I think he's one of the most brilliant men I've ever seen. I want your opinion.
Well, it's...
Manly he was talking about.
I beg your pardon?
He was talking on South Africa. He was debating Stephen Solaz and Randall Robinson.
Yeah, I believe you're talking about Allan Keyes, who is black, by the way.
Right, he's black, and he's brilliant.
Yeah. Allan Keyes has succeeded in overcoming some of the most scurrilous diatribes any member of the State Department has ever had to endure. I recall one program when that reptilian Tom Braden, who as he gets older and older gets to look less like a person and more like a reptile, tried to denigrate Mr. Keyes, and Keyes made Braden look like the jerk that he is.
An unbelievable debate.
And that particular debate that you're talking about with Randall Robinson illustrated what I've been saying all along about Trans-Africa. Trans-Africa is an organization that is more interested in the color red than in the color black.
Right. And he was bringing out the point. He says he doesn't want to see South Africa destroyed and in ashes. He wants to see a democracy there. Yeah. And he says if it takes 30 years, but you've got to go about it the right way.
Right. No, I concur. I agree about Allan Keyes. And if I were forming the next administration, I'd want him to play a prominent role. Be a certified, except for the police, you got to be a certified illiterate to work for the Port of Authority. You take those toll takers. They are, we were talking to a guy about the Cro-Magnon species of 11,000 BC.
Right.
They're proof that Cro-Magnons not only did exist, but still exist.
Oh, well,
Give me that ticket book.
Bob, what's the matter? You don't know what this is the matter?
I think that it is a disgrace that... No, you know what I despise? The hypocrisy of it all.
Oh, you know what it is, Bob? It's amazing. You know, they want to throw these things over at us on the tips of the ICBMs, you know, and then they want to sell them to us.
That's right.
You know, I don't agree with everything that, you know, that you say, that you talk about, but I saw this in Automotive News, I think it was last week, this week, whenever it was. I can't believe it. I can't believe this. And then we're going to let them in the country with it.
Well, you know, the Soviet Union is eager to sell more manufactured goods to the United States for two reasons. Of course, it wants to earn more dollars to raise its sagging foreign currency reserves. And it's one of the few countries running a trade deficit with the United States. $650 million last year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we don't have enough substandard cars in the U.S. now. We're going to bring in some more.
Well, that's another thing. I'm sure it'll be a lousy car. Because when I was in the Soviet Union, every civilian item I saw was pure junk.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, Gorbachev, my name is Grant. Grant. Every American citizen is eligible to run for public office. Where is it written that a person can't run for public office?
Well, but your politics is so far to the right.
Well, if that's the case, then the people will reject me.
Attila the Hun.
Hey, Bob.
Yes?
If that's the case, then the people will reject me. Isn't that what this government is all about? Hold on a minute. You smug, arrogant jerk. You make these statements, I can't even respond. Isn't that what elections are all about? To determine who the people want? You're talking while I'm asking the question. You're a rude jerk. I don't want to waste my time with you. I couldn't care less what you think. Eat your heart out, you creep. I'm here and you're there. Hello, Fran.
Hi, Bob Grant. It's a first-time caller. And what I want to know is where can I send contributions for you to go into...
All I want is a cup of coffee right now.
Well, I'm having one black...
Because Rosemary Nelson left without getting me my coffee.
Well, I'm going to have a little bit of coffee with a little anisette in it.
Oofa, anisette.
No.
You sound like a gavone when you talk that way.
Listen. So,
besides, I don't like Italian coffee. I like American coffee. I don't like Demitasse.
No, well...
I have to laugh at some of these people that... They say, I got a nice demitasse for you. I say, pashkiv.
Well, I can't drink it too often. Once in a while, I'm allowed.
And anisette. Blah! You ruined my whole day.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, if you do decide...
Send a pound of 50s to make me feel better.
Oh, where do you want me to send it? Where do you want me to send it?
No, I'm joking, Fran. See if you don't agree that she is... I think the word would be paranoid. Listen to this. Mr. Grant, your fuse continues to burn over Koch, Koppel, Lautenberg Stern, Meyerson, Golden, Solars, Soviet Jews who enter your America, and on and on and on. How boring. Now you add Kitty Dukakis to your dreary list. Your inbred hatred is no longer news. That you are a demagogue has been long self-evident. That you attract the slanderous bigots is an ugly phenomenon. You are a small-time huckster who hit upon this very fashionable ruse to bring you fame and fortune. Congressman? Senator? How about Chancellor? Enjoy. Signed, Carletta. Before Ted Kennedy leapt to the Senate floor, Robert Bork's America, he said, would be a virtual reign of terror. No justice is better than this injustice, he thundered. That's what the Duke of Chappaquinddick said, folks. Well, if you'd like a second opinion about Robert Bork's America, ask Barry Bronstein. On May 30th, 1983, Bronstein walked into his parents' home in Baltimore, Maryland, and his life has never been the same. On the couch, gagged and trussed up like a pig for the slaughter, lay his father, his chest perforated by multiple stab wounds. On the floor, a few feet away, he saw his mother, also bound and gagged. She had been stabbed in the face, neck, and chest. Next to her dead body was a large butcher knife, the blade bent and bloody. Erwin and Rose Bronstein's 53-year marriage had ended. Butchered like animals, Bronstein recalled, in a victim impact statement filed with the Maryland Attorney General over a year later. But the suffering of Barry Bronstein and his family goes on. Fear, anger, depression, memory loss, crying jags, and inability to sleep are just a few of the symptoms reported by the couple's survivors. Now get this. Nevertheless, on June 15th, the Supreme Court ruled that the state of Maryland may not take into consideration Barry Bronstein's testimony in sentencing John Booth, who was convicted of the murders. Your parents' murder may call in a parade of your parents' murderer may call in a parade of witnesses to testify to his deprived childhood or his previously sterling character, the Supreme Court told Barry in Booth versus Maryland. But your testimony is irrelevant, unconstitutional. The Booth case, like so many others, was decided 5-4. And Justice Powell, Lewis Powell, provided the swing vote. In Robert Bork's America, Ideologically biased judges would not grant criminals more rights than victims. Of all the slanderous charges flung at Bork by his political opponents, the charge of rigid ideologue is the most damaging and absurd. What has made Bork one of the most respected legal minds in this country has been his refusal to abuse the power of his office by placing it in the service of ideology. The sole task of the judge, he said in a speech before the American Enterprise Institute in 1984, is to translate the framers or the legislators' morality into a rule to govern unforeseen circumstances. The abstinence from giving his own desires free play, that continuing and self-conscious renunciation of power, that is the morality of the jurist. Conservatives who expect Bork to vote their way on litmus test issues may be surprised. Many reporters, for example, have labeled Bork's strong opponent of abortion. Perhaps he is, but I have no knowledge of that fact, nor have they. Whatever Bork's feelings about abortion may be in the privacy of the voting booth, he leaves them behind when he dons his black robes of justice. And that is the most important issue of all. Robert Bork's America is a place where the American people, through their elected representatives, govern themselves, passing laws and constitutional amendments that judges as well as legislators are bound to respect. Debate over Bork's nomination makes clear the alternative to the rule of law is ruled by lawyers, 9 aging lawyers. What self-respecting American is going to put up with that?
Literally, because it seems that the only thing that they understand, the Russians and the towelheads over there, are the use of force. I really don't think there's any other answer.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I like Richard's description of the Iranians' towel heads.
The interesting part was they were also talking about the state of radio in New York. And it was very unusual because your name was mentioned, okay, by one of the phone callers. And their response, as soon as they brought up your name, was that they hope that the Sandinistas hang you up and get the chance. I don't know if you want to know, if you may have an idea of what station that kind of remark would be made on.
WBAI?
You got it.
Uh-huh.
You got it. That's, the funny thing is, I totally agree with them. What do you think of that?
I think you're funny.
I agree with them because, you know what?
I think you're funny.
Anybody like you or Reagan who would commit atrocities against innocent people?
Atrocities?
Yes. Anybody should be hung up, and I hope you are assassinated. It's just like I
well, wait a minute. Hold it. Yeah. Hold it. You say you hope I'm assassinated.
Yeah.
I can't. It's a little pipsqueak. It's a little nerd.
You said the same thing.
Hey, listen. Hey, look, I'll tell you what.
With Palmer, I'm going to say it about you.
I'll make a deal with you.
What?
I'll make a deal with you. Instead of hoping, I'll tell you where to find me. I'll tell you where I am. I'll tell you what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a red shirt today, which is a color you must be very fond of. And I'll tell you where to meet me at 6 o'clock. Take your best shot, you little nerd.
Tell me where?
Take your best shot.
Tell me where?
I'll be downstairs the corner of 6th Avenue and 54th.
I'll be there.
All right, you pipsqueak. How will I know you? Hello? He hung up.
Mr. Grant.
Yes, Allan.
I'd like to address the subject of your possible candidacy for the Senate. I think that we're all aware that candidates for public office bring with them a certain amount of baggage. Nixon shed his with his checker speech, and Jesse Jackson may have had some success in shedding that Hyde remark, and Louis Farrakhan, and of course Gary Hart couldn't shake his excess baggage. I think that the problem you would face is the years on radio. I think that you would be the first to admit that there's been an awful lot of shooting from the hip. And the enemy camp is sure to record and research all of this. Now, I'd like to give you a for instance.
It's one thing to think that the public debate you might have with Patrick Moynihan or whoever wins the Democratic primary, it's one thing to believe that you could chop them up with witticisms and cleverness and so forth. But the audience is going to be stacked with certain questions. For example, on your Monday show, when the question of Joseph Papp's sponsorship came up with the Cuban troubadours, you were quick to respond by saying that Joseph Papp and Ed Asner and a number of those people fell into a particular group, and you concluded by shouting into the mic that they should be exterminated. Now, someone in the audience is bound to ask you during a campaign whether upon reaching the Senate you're prepared to introduce a bill to implement and a mechanism for implementing the extermination of people who are disloyal or traitors to the United States, and who is going to make the decision. You would also be besieged from the audience by people who want to know when and how the Pope became irrelevant. And you may have great answers for all of these questions, but the point is that you're not going to debate the questions you want to debate. You're going to be besieged with all of the side issues. You've also said in the past that all the Fegalach should be lined up against the wall and exterminated. These things have to come back to haunt you. And this is what is going to consume the debate. I think that fantasizing about chopping up Moynihan or someone else in public debates is one thing. The question you should have asked Mr. Clark and the people who are supporting you are the basic questions. And I have some experience in politics of this sort is, how much money are they going to raise and where's the money coming from? This business about raising $5 and $10 from listeners in your particular contingency won't amount to a hill of beans compared to the treasury that Moynihan's going to amass. And this is the important question, the money. The public debates and the press conferences are something else. And you must keep in mind that you can't hang up. You can't tell the press and the public at public debates to get off your phone. You're going to have to answer these questions and you're going to get sidetracked with them.
Those of you good folk who voted for him in the last election, those gavones out there who think he's one of you, he's not one of you. Il Supremo was in the vanguard of that group of sleazy politicians who wanted to outlaw AIDS tests for insurance policies. So you still think he's one of you? You still think he's a regular guy? My foot.
We hate New York City. I'll tell you why. First of all, hello?
I'm listening, Ron.
Okay. First of all, you ever drive in New York, especially Manhattan? If you're basically like you're at a red light, and if it turns green, if you're not going 40 miles an hour within 2 seconds, the guy starts honking you, and then he, who knows what he does to you.
Yeah, but if you go out too soon, you'll get broadsided.
That's right. And these things. When I came first to New York a number of years ago, I saw, like, you go to these shopping centers.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to take the carts out to the car. They have these gates. I never saw this before.
Well, you can't blame them because so many of these chiselers
So why do they do it out?
have been stealing carts. And the carts cost all of us because they go anywhere from $60 to $150. And the store, losing all those carts, has to make up for it, and they jack up the price on things they charge you.
I understand that, but that's the point. The point is that doesn't happen out of town. And also, like,
Well, it depends on what you mean by out of town. I can tell you in Woodbridge, it happens plenty. As a matter of fact,
Chicago.
there are, well, I'm not interested in Chicago. I'm only interested in the great tri-state area because that's the area that the Bob Grant Show is heard of.
New Jersey's included, the same thing.
That's right. I'm telling you, out in Woodbridge, New Jersey, they have mutants that are killing the ShopRite and the Caldors by taking... They have one complex there. They have a whole bunch of carts. I don't know what they're doing. It's like a wagon train of carts.
Yeah. I also came to...
I keep looking for John Wayne or somebody there because you see all these carts in an open prairie.
Yeah.
And you're looking for the remains of Bruce Cabot as an Indian chief. You think it's the site of a battle someplace.
Yeah, open up their hoods so that they don't take the batteries. You don't see this out of town.
Well, that's because we're under siege here. We're under siege because thanks to the policies Prune-Faced Wagner, the Tower of Jelly, the President administration, the almost mayor, just before him. Thanks to their policies, we have turned things over to the mutants. At 2 o'clock, and I have to keep remembering that a lot of people aren't with me at 2, who are with me now at 4. I talked about just one of many, many victims of a mutant. I talked about Karen Ann Rochow. And Karen Ann had the misfortune, just a teenage girl, there's a little bit of a thing, her parents lived next door to a fiend. Now this fiend, in 1973, was convicted of rape, sexual abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and assault against an 18-year-old woman. Prior to that, he was convicted of assault with intent to injure during the rape of an 8-year-old girl. Clearly, this mutant had served notice on society. He had said, hey, I'm not just your run-of-the-mill human being. I'm a predator. I may have 2 arms and 2 legs. I may have 2 eyes and a nose. I may have a face. And you may think it's a human face. But there's not a human mind. There's not a human heart inside. I am a mutant. If I get my hands on a little girl, I'll rape her, torture her, kidnap her. He had served notice. He let society know in no unmistakable term. And yet, these so-called jerks that we call judges, the whole so-called system, had let this guy out. Let him out. And he was living right next door to little Karen Ann. I say little Karen Ann, even though she was 15, she was a little bitty thing. And in no time flat, he did what he's programmed to do. As a mutant, he is programmed to rape, torture, abuse, and kill. And that's what he did to Karen. Now, the point of all this is, and I know we can't bring Karen back, but we can keep from creating more Karens. But the point of all this is that Mrs. Rochow told us, in desperation, I wrote Governor Cuomo. Now get all of this. I wrote Governor Cuomo a letter and asked him why. Why was this allowed to happen? The beast who killed my baby had attacked 3 girls before that we know of. Who knows how many others he may have killed and raped? Governor, why did this happen? Now get a load of this answer from Il Supremo. Get a load of Il Supremo's answer. In his supercilious, arrogant, pseudo-intellectual way, here's what Il Supremo said. Many of the killers are victims of society. And if they had work or something to do, they wouldn't go around killing people. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a slander against all the good people out there who don't have work to do, but don't fill their idle hours by raping, abusing, kidnapping, and murdering. Now, it just may be that I'm way out in right field somewhere. It just may be that I'm way the heck out, and they're going to put me in Creedmoor, because I don't think anybody else gives a damn. I really don't. If they did, they would listen to Mrs. Rochow, who asked, doesn't he understand that innocent people are dying at the hands of criminals who've been freed? Doesn't he? Next Thursday, day after tomorrow, he'll do his arrogant performance on another radio station very close to us here on the dial. We're 77, they're 88. I know they heavily screen that program. The person who screens that program is trying to make the governor look as good as possible. They're afraid the governor will get mad, you know, and he has to slug it out with real people. Real people who call the Bob Grant Show. Real people who might abuse the governor, might get him, upset. So they try to screen the program in hopes of having a bunch of marshmallows thrown at him, in hopes of a lot of praise and all of that, and set up questions. If anybody gives a darn, if anybody cares, make sure you get through. Try to sound nice to the screener. Try to sound harmless. You know, nobody here but us chickens. And call and put it to him. Tell him. Say, do you realize what you said to Mrs. Rochow, the mother of Karen Ann? Do you realize what you said? Hey, he'll come up with some glib, smart alecky comment like he always does. But what the heck? He hears me talking and he laughs. He practically gets a double hernia laughing. You know why? Because he thinks about last November when he won that big non-election. And that's all people like him are interested in. Building coalitions, making sure they don't get the wrong people mad at them, perpetuating themselves in that big ego trip known as being a chief executive. WABC.
I feel bad about the 15-year-old girl that was murdered. I just can't understand the bozo in Albany, giving an answer that this person is a victim of society. A person that rapes an 8-year-old girl is no victim of society.
Can you imagine the insensitivity?
Believe it.
Can you imagine the insensitivity of El Supremo writing that to the mother of the murdered Karen?
They see evil deeds, but they never see evil people.
Did you hear me quote the absurd letter that Il Supremo had the temerity to write to poor Mrs. Rochow?
Yes, and he is among that criminals lobby that includes the ACLU and legal aid. And this is a thinking that goes on that there is no evil in the world. There are no evil beings.
Yeah.
There are evil deeds that...
Everybody's a victim. Nobody is responsible for what they do. Here on WABC, hello, Varvaro.
Hello, Mr. Grant.
You owe me an apology.
For what?
I'll tell you for what.
Let me say something first, and then I'll...
For being a fraud and a fake. I have your letter. I have your letter.
Why didn't you...
I'd like to draw your attention to the following events, you say. July 22-ish, 1987, Barbara Laren, that's you writing, listening to the Bob Grant Show for the first time, decides to call in. She comments on Jesse Jackson's dangerous flirtation with communism, says she fears him. Your response, Barbara, you are an extremely aware and sophisticated young woman. Who made you so aware? Event number 2, August 6, 1987. Still listening to the show, Barbara Laren, using the name Natasha, calls Grant, states her support for the teaching of creationism in public schools. Your response, the size of your brain is doubtless very small. You have an accent so thick I could cut through it with a knife. Then you went on to say, now, how do you suppose I went in 3 short weeks from sounding sophisticated to having a thick accent, from being extremely aware to having a small brain? Do 3 weeks of your show usually have this shrinking effect on people's brains? Or perhaps small brains and thick accents are simply more noticeable than the views they express are different from your own? Continue to resort to cavil, Mr. Grant. It's amusing. Sincerely, Barbara Laren.
You owe me an apology, Mr. Grant?
Now, you owe me an apology because you're a fraud.
Judging from that?
Yes, judging from that, because you put on an assumed accent, you changed your name, you pretended you were somebody else. That's not honest, Barbara. Not honest at all.
It's not honest of you not to have read my letter in the first place, but just to have commented on it. The letter proves that you're the fraud and not me.
I gotta get out of here. Karen Ann borrowed her brother's bicycle to sell candy door to door. And she says, I knew when she didn't come home on time that something was terribly wrong. Well, even before Karen's beaten and bruised body, Governor, had been found, sheriff's deputies were interrogating next-door neighbor Roy Tarnowski. The bearded and scraggly-haired Tarnowski had a long history of violent sex crimes and had been released from prison just 5 months earlier after serving 6 years for rape and kidnapping. Before that, he was convicted of rape, sexual abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and assault against an 18-year-old woman. Before that, he was convicted of assault with intent to injure during the rape of an 8-year-old girl. Police suspected almost immediately that he was their man. They knew, but we didn't know. We didn't know that this man was an animal they let loose to live amongst us and prey on us, says Anita. Well, make a long story short, Ms. Rochow, in desperation, wrote to Il Supremo, the governor of the Empire State. Now, I want to quote Mrs. Rochow. I want to quote her directly, if I may. I wrote Governor Cuomo a letter and asked him why. He answered by saying, now get a load of this, hold on to your digitalis. Many of the killers are victims of society. And if they had work or something to do, they wouldn't go around killing people. Can you believe it? Well, that's Il Supremo. That's the man who's governor of the state of New York. That's the man who acts like he has all the answers to all our problems. I don't even care to discuss any other talk show, whether the guy's name is Joe Schmo, Ralph Shagnasty. If you want to make a comment, you can make a comment, but I don't care to discuss it.
Okay, I would like to make this comment.
In other words, you're just a talk show addict. It doesn't make any difference who the host is. You'll listen to a talk show.
No.
There are people like that.
Listening to my bottom line. Because there's one talk, and this is what I said with my bottom line, to circumvent what I'm saying. There's one that I would not listen to, okay, that is absolutely, in my opinion, as you say, a mutant, okay? I wouldn't listen to him. Accidentally, somebody that was parking my car yesterday happened to put his station on this morning, and I happened to hear him. I happen to have a lot of respect for you people that do talk shows, and if you want to say that I'm an addict to it, fine. Okay?
It doesn't make you a bad person.
It doesn't make me a bad person.
Yeah.
You're all legitimate.
No, there are people, there are people, it doesn't really make any difference who's doing the program. They just got to listen to talk shows, but that's all right.
I'm select, okay? And this is the point that I'm trying to make, all right? One of you, as I said, one of the people that are on mentioned the fact that he heard that you were trying to run for Senate and so on and so forth. And
I haven't been trying to run for the Senate.
You anticipate or are considering, whatever, okay?
All right, considering. That's better.
That you are excellent at what you do right now and that you would probably be excellent as a senator. I just want to make that comment for you, okay? Now, this morning, okay, now this is what really bothers me. All right, as I said, this station was on by accident.
Why are you so defensive about having that station on?
Because you know who I'm talking about. It's an FM station, and I am
You're talking about Howard Stern?
Oh, yes. I didn't know if I was allowed to mention his name or not.
Oh, my gosh. We just had our license suspended. They burned down the tower because I said Howard Stern.
Well, Bob,
the tower just caved in, so we're not going out. We're not broadcasting anymore. The tower collapsed because I said Howard Stern. So it doesn't make any difference, Ron. We can say anything we want now.
You say that our opinion counts, right? How can we destroy that tower?
Destroy what?
His tower that you say that it's going to collapse.
I said the tower.
The tower?
The broadcasting tower. My broadcasting tower.
No, I don't want...
The WABC tower collapsed because I said the name Howard Stern.
I'm just asking your opinion. How it's...
All right, stay right there, will you? Don't move.
I will.
And let me say this to you, Ron.
Okay.
If one more time you sound defensive over having listened to him, I'll come out to Secaucus and punch your nose right down your throat. So don't apologize for having listened to him.
Okay.
I have to laugh at some of these people. they say, oh, I would never really tune in purposely. It was just happened to be there. It's 5:50.
Man, that would make humor over the fact that an airline crashed and all of those people were killed, and joke about it, laugh about it, and make that slapping sound, and so on and so forth. Which, again, if a lot of his programming is sexually related and people like that, okay, let's say everybody to their own, you could listen to him. But I really do believe that you have to draw the line when you have a disaster like this, and all that a man can do with his cohort, that girl, is to make jest, to make humor over it, and how they reacted just before the plane crashed, and making all kinds of detrimental remarks, and laughing over it. Again.
Well, I don't think we're going down there with American troops because the American people have lost their will since Vietnam. That's why I say we're on the way out, phasing ourselves out as a truly great power. The only thing that can save us would be a Contra victory, and I don't see how we're going to achieve that with the Lodinos and the Ed Bolins and the other jerks in the United States Congress. To Ken Boehm, president of a pro-Contra organization, and Steve Taylor, who is director of an organization which is pro-Sandinista. And
straight, the first fact, and this is something you do whenever you go into a foreign country, you find out what the proper exchange rate is. I'm pointing this up because Mr. Boehm said the exchange rate was 13,000 Cordobas to the dollar. Now, this is way off. I was there. It was 6.2 Cordoba. A thousand Cordoba to the dollar. Now, what this demonstrates to me is that either Mr. Boehm was doing one of two things. A, he was exaggerating to make his claim just a little bit more strong, or B, he really didn't have command of the facts. Now,
well, Mr. Boehm is on the line. Would you like
1,000 to 1, and that was the official rate. In Miami, you can get 13,000 to 1 any day of the week.
Well, that's going black market. Now, if we're talking,
of course, that's what currency is really worth, sir.
If we're talking about what the currency is really worth in Nicaragua, which is what you had said on the air, it is 6,200.
Well, then why are they offering 7,001, which would be a bargain at the airport?
Well, perhaps it did go up, but it didn't certainly go up.
It goes up by the week, sir.
It did not go up to 13,000. There's absolutely no way. I just called and found out. I called down.
Now, anybody who doubts it can go to Miami and get 13,000.
That's Miami. Let's talk about Nicaragua, okay?
I'm talking what the currency is worth, not what the government says it's worth.
All right.
The people. When Somoza left power in 1979, he owned 25% of the land and 10% of...
Well, I see you're still fighting Somoza. Well, that's interesting because this is precisely what communist revolutions do. They try to freeze the time into when they launch the revolution. Yeah. So you want to hold up the specter of Somoza, and that gives you away, Mr. Taylor. You are a pro-communist, pro-Sandinista stooge.
Our own admission and by the CIA's admission are, first of all, most of them are made up of former members of Somoza's National Guard, so therefore it's not a dead issue.
Secondly, the average age is 18, 19 years old. Well, Somoza's been out for 8 years. Does that mean there are a lot of 11-year-old Somocistas around?
Petty corruption, and I don't think you would dispute, Mr. Ball, that the Somoza regime was rather corrupt.
I want to congratulate Mr. Taylor because he is describing virtually the same experience I had in another communist state. This one happened to be the model for the Nicaraguans, the Soviet Union. I walked around the Soviet Union for 2 weeks. Nobody picked my pocket. Nobody mugged me. Nobody approached me outside of a hooker, believe it or not, in Red Square. But in a totalitarian society, the street crime is virtually non-existent for obvious reasons.
Action was straightforward. That is not a totalitarian government that is there. But it's also not a communist government.
Sir, the New York Times said only the naive would believe that was a fair election. The New York Times does not support President Reagan on...
Gentlemen, I can see Daniel Ortega. I see where that communist lackey of the Soviet Union had his good buddy, Yasser Arafat, visiting him in 1980. And he was just one of many anti-American swine that Daniel Ortega saw fit to laud.
Because I am absolutely infuriated with these teenage time bombs that are jumping out of nowhere to clean my windshield every time I drive into the city. These pizza-faced eating teenage punks then demand money for their, quote, services. And if I refuse to give them money, they'll hit my car. One time, one of these degenerates removed my glasses and stomped on them, leaving me darn near sightless the rest of the evening. Something has got to be done. Your thoughts?
Well, I addressed this very question to the Emperor of the City of New York, Edward I the First. He said he was going to look into it. Now, that was it, January 6th, 1986. He's still looking into it. The fact of the matter is a poor individual motorist has got to run a gauntlet upon entering this idiotic island called Manhattan.
Right.
And what they ought to do is declare open season on these squeege artists and allow us to shoot them.
I like.
They really should pass an ordinance saying if anybody tries to squeege your windshield, you're allowed to shoot them.
Sometimes I have thoughts of just running them down.
Well, I have a dream, and in that dream, I'm coming in with a Sherman tank with a flamethrower. You get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.